Okay, Jesse, this should be way easier to follow with recording my actual screen. So I'm pretty sure the videos you've seen have shown you how to put in a ring rail, a profile, and how to do a sweep one, and then how to do an outer ring rail and maybe a little bit of sweep too. Although I know that your version doesn't have outer ring rail. I'm thinking they called it something else, but that's not important because we're going to talk about how to make your own curves in this video. And one of those times that may be beneficial is when you need to make your own outside ring rail. Maybe you need it to be a shape that isn't a default shape in Matrix. So as we start, we're going to, as always, start, let's clean this up. This is a hot mess from what I was working on. We're always going to start with a ring rail. And again, if you've been using some of these buttons up here, you'll see ring rail will probably be in this icon history. So let's add a ring rail of any size. And you can see we have our curve there. There's a couple different commands that we can use to make an outside ring rail. And they can also be beneficial when we're doing something else like making a pendant or building a pattern. So the 4 things I'm going to go over in this video are offset, interp curve, line, and your O snaps, which was named by someone without a 12-year-old sense of humor because I laugh every time I hit the O snap button. Okay, so offset is exactly what it sounds like. You click on any curve and you offset it by whatever amount you input. So for example, if I click this curve and type offset, it'll give me the option here for distance. And I can type in a distance, and you can see it's getting ready to offset my curve in either direction, 1 millimeter. Or I can even hit through point, and I can control how far it offsets, again, in either direction. So if hot pink is my inside ring rail, I would want something that goes outward. So how that might be advantageous is, let's say you're doing a gents band, and you know it is 1.7 millimeters tall. Well, there you have an outside ring rail. Now, if it's the same width all the way around, you really don't need an outside ring rail because you'll have those profiles. But for argument's sake, let's talk about that because that's how we can use offset. Another one is interp curve, INTRP CRV. I'm pretty sure that's under the curve menu. Let's see here. It looks like it's third in. Basically, it's like building any kind of polyline. Every time you left click, it's kind of saving space and kind of blending your curves. Obviously, this is a little more freehand. You can kind of see how it clicks to its own end, but it's more controlled by the user. It's not necessarily as clean as you can see because, you know, your hand-eye coordination isn't as great as a specific computer command. Outside of interp curve, you can also type in line, which again should be under the curve menu. They're calling it single line there, but it's exactly what it sounds like. Left click when you're done. Now, if you want them to connect to one another, your menu looks different, and I'm pretty sure these snaps just show up at the bottom of the main menu on yours, but on the far right here, you see when I click it, some of these are highlighted. Really, the only ones you need to worry about are these 2 on the very end for you. The one that shows a dot in the middle and the one that shows the dot on the end. What it means is you can connect a line to another line's midpoint or end point. So let's say you are making a shape not for a ring. And I was going to start with my interp curve. This is going to be an engraved pattern. And now I want to put a line to it. You can kind of see how I can snap. It kind of locks into that end piece. You might even want to do that with an interp curve because you can kind of see how it becomes really flowy. But let's say I want to make something that's a little more leaf shaped. If I kept going all the way around, it doesn't ever have that sharp point. But if I do 2 interp curves, and right click to finish and then start over and snap at the end, that looks a lot more like a leaf than this one over here. So that's offset, interp curve line, and then working on our snap. So let's go back to our ring rail here. We're going to go to enter curve just for argument's sake. I'm going to turn off these snaps just because I don't want them snapping to the circle. I'm just going to draw a shape here. Now, just like you use the profile placer, you can also build your own profile using the same idea. So in this particular case, I would use your snaps. I'd probably turn on this one here with the 4 dots quad because it's going to snap to 12, 3, 6, and 9 on a circle. So I'm going to hide this. I'm just literally typing in hide while the outside is selected. And I can type in enter curve and make kind of any random old shape I want. Oh, now I show my outer curve. So you can see how I kind of have the same idea as what we did in the last video where you did a sweep 2 on a profile that was already built. So I'm going to hit sweep 2. I have, well, you know what? Let's exit because I already had those selected. That's habit. Sweep 2 because I have 2 rails. So I'm going to select the inner and then outer. You can do that in either order. It doesn't matter. And then it's going to ask me to select my cross-section curves, which in this case is this profile that I've drawn by hand. I'm going to press enter or right-click again, and you can kind of see what kind of insano shape it built. So again, in sweep 2, the assumption is as the ring gets taller, you also want it to get wider. If you click maintain height, you'll see that will change. It'll keep the same width, but only increase the height. And then you'll see our shape actually extends past our inside ring rail. And the reason it did that is because my profile extended past it. But I just drew any old thing by hand. That way you can kind of get an idea of what it looked like in it. And again, it could be something totally different up here. So up here I could have, it doesn't even have to be on the same line here as this guy. It could be off to the side. And you can see when I sweep 2 and select my rails and then select my cross-section curves, it'll actually kind of bow out. So it only did between the 2, but obviously we could do a closed sweep. We could have it maintain the height, and again you kind of see it just has an angled shape here. So you can play with those buttons. You can see with these you definitely have a lot more control and freedom to do things that are a little more abnormal versus the standard profiles, the standard, outer ring rail, which I know isn't a command in yours. Build things that are a little more linear. Honestly, most of the time you're going to be doing something that's a little more plain, but these are things that are valuable to know because when you're making a gents ring, for example, that has a groove, there may not be a profile that already has that groove for you, and that way you can build a profile with the exact width, height, and groove that you want, and not rely on what's already in Matrix. I hope that's helpful. Play with those buttons, and if you have any questions, just let me know.